part of y'all's job, ain't part of my job.
Well, I always heard that it was the actor's warm-up was shit bugger bastard piss fuck fart. That's what I thought you were meant to say. Get the old vocal cords going.
That's news to me.
That is far more clever than I could ever be, Charles.
Jim, you got a new poster.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Joyce recognizes it.
Oh, cool. Hi, Margot.
Hi, Margot.
Hello.
There's Joyce.
Hello, Kendra.
Hello. How's everybody doing today?
Good, thank you.
Hello,
Joyce,
Kendra. Thanks for joining.
Joyce, I told him I had this poster behind me for you, if you recognize it.
Oh, do you want me to go get mine? It's framed and hanging in my bathroom.
I can only put one in the view, so
Is that your tour poster?
It's Melissa Etheridge doing her version of a famous for the geeks photo of Bruce Springsteen during his Born to Run photo shoot.
Excellent. Hey, Cam.
Bruce left his shirt on. She needed to outdo him.
It's a great poster, man. It's primo. Awesome.
Oh, there's Natty.
I love that you have it in the bathroom, Joyce. We have an ASC poster in one of our bathrooms, and it's Chris Johnston as Paroles. I asked him, we won it in the raffle, and I asked him where he wanted me to put it in my house, and he said the bathroom. So you got it.
Wow.
Another good choice of poster, Sarah. So good to see you.
It's so great to see you too. It's been so long.
Amy Burns, thank you for joining. So happy that you're there. I'm sure Dave is with you too.
Let's see everybody.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Natalie.
I have these.
You made it, Nat.
I actually got an earlier flight.
That's awesome.
No drama.
Doing that.
That's for you.
We thought Natalie might be in a cab.
Hi, Gemma.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and see, now I have to put the list over on the side so that I know who the folks are that are here that I can't see.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way to make more folks on the screen.
I thought that there was, but I also confused all the different platforms and what they're capable of.
If you go to the triple dots at the bottom, more options.
Mm-hmm.
There's change layout.
Yeah, tiled legacy.
Yep, you can go tiled. Yeah, you can kind of choose.
I was supposed to do it.
Choose your own adventure, and then there's a slider at the bottom that lets you pick how many people you're seeing.
Thank goodness we have Ben on here. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm going to 49. I'm feeling very confident. All righty.
You said choose your own adventure, and I went looking for that tab. It doesn't actually say that, does it?
It does not.
Well, we got a lot to talk about, so why don't we go ahead and start, unless, Tom, you tell me not to.
No, rock and roll.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Warren, and welcome to my playground, named with me in the title of it. Thank you, Jason Young. What we're going to do is we've got 5 Kates from 5 different Shrews that I either directed or partly directed, and I would love to start with each of you Kates introducing yourself, giving us a brief bio about yourself, and again, because I'm in the name of this program, mention something about how we met or us working together or something embarrassing about me. So please feel free to do any Jim Warren reference that you would like. And we're going to do this in order, in chronological order of when y'all played Kate. So we've got way back to 1989, Joyce Piper Forbes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my name is Joyce Piper Forbes. First time caller, long time fan. I feel that it's been a real privilege to have been able to act in and produce and direct a number of Shakespeare's plays, as well as teach Shakespeare and acting to high school students. Jim and I met at James Madison University, where the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express was born. I was fortunate enough to be one of the original members of SSE when we launched from the college in the late 80s. I then went on to have my own Shakespeare theater company for a number of years that Amy Burns is very familiar with. She has joined us here today. And until SSE called again, all grown up, as the American Shakespeare Center. And I had a really great time being one of Jim's associate artistic directors there in Stanton for a while. In terms of Taming of the Shrew, I've played Kate 3 times. She is so yummy, and was able to co-direct a production with Jim, starring the formidable Natalie Gold, who is also here with us today. So that's me.
And her Petruchio, Josh Carpenter, is here.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that, Josh. How cool. Awesome.
Joyce is Petruchio.
That's my Petruchio.
Yeah, I'm a different
Petruchio.
Very cool. So that's me.
So our next Kate chronologically is from 1994, Margot McGurr.
Hi, I am Margot, and I played Kate on the Tongues Like Knives tour in 1994, which is astonishingly 31 years ago.
Stop it.
I actually toured as an actor for, I think I had 3 full-year tours and one half-year tour. And I was in the office for about 8 years, wearing many, many hats when the SSE was still 2 rooms in an attic in terms of office space and just the touring company. I am married to Jim Warren, so I have lots and lots of stories. 1994 was the year that we were engaged, and we were actually married on a break-in tour.
Wow.
I played Kate just once, and it was an interesting year. And
Margot, surely you have an embarrassing story about Jim, your husband.
you know, I don't know that I actually do have that many embarrassing stories
Wow.
about Jim.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go next to chronologically. Natalie Gold played Kate next for the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We
Is this-
can.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm Natalie Gold. I played Kate in 1998
Yes.
on the Tough Love tour. That's right.
Yep.
Yes. Technically, the 10th anniversary Tough Love Tour.
The anniversary Tough Love tour. Thank you. And it was co-directed by Jim Warren and Joyce. Tom Evans was in it. That's where I met Tom.
Yeah.
Josh was not my Petruchio. I've never met Josh, but I bet he's fantastic. My Petruchio was CJ, right? CJ
Yep.
Cliff
Yep.
Irving. Yeah.
Yep.
It was the first time I ever got to play a role that amazing and strong. And I felt like our tour was 5 months. And I said this to Jim on the email the other day. I don't have an embarrassing story. I was kind of right out of college, and I feel like somebody paid me to, I would have paid so much money to do that tour. Jim didn't know that, which is good because I got paid to do it, but I felt like I couldn't believe I was getting paid to learn that much and get to do something so amazing.
Before we keep going, part of the bios that were in the Facebook and Instagram individual things advertising y'all. Joyce, where do you work now? I think that is interesting.
So after the theater world, I parlayed my storytelling skills to become a video producer, and 12 years ago was hired at the U.S. Department of State. And now I'm still at the State Department, and I am the Director of Digital Content for the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And Kendra Tidd, who is on this call, is one of my colleagues there in the office. Mike Rosenberg, shut the front door! Sorry, I got excited.
You're on mute, Mike.
Joyce, I think that might be the new title for the podcast now.
Sorry about that.
Little microphone. There you go, Mike.
There you go. You are
Joyce.
on.
When I heard Joyce was going to do this, I'm like, I have to be on. Jim, thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. I heard back from y'all's. Mike was Joyce's groomio. And when I heard back from their Petruchio, he said, Joyce is going to be there and Mike might be there. I can't make it. My kid's got a little league practice. So
Yeah.
Charlie Tucker says hi. Natalie Gold, one of my favorite things that you have done in recent years was on HBO. Can you mention Succession?
Yes,
And-
I was. Yes, go ahead.
Anybody remember Natalie on Succession? She was Roy's wife.
Yes, I played Rava Roy on Succession.
Well, yeah, they're all yeah.
Yeah, I was Kendall Roy's ex-wife,
Kendall.
almost ex-wife. Yeah.
Kept rooting for even more juicy scenes, but the ones that they gave you were awesome.
Thank you.
Moving next chronologically, that was Natalie was 1998 10th anniversary Tough Love tour. 10 years later, Jenna Hoban.
Yes. Hello. Hi, everybody. Jots with my Petruchio. It's so nice to see you here. It would actually feel weird to talk about this without you here. So I'm glad to see you. That was 2007. And I was thinking like, oh, I don't know if I can remember, but it's nothing compared to you three who have to remember an additional 7 to 10 years. But lucky for me, I journaled through that entire tour. In fact, for 20 years. So this afternoon, I thought, well, let's just see if I wrote anything down about my experience of playing Kate on the Taming of the Shrew. And I found volumes. I was very interested in documenting my process as an actor and what I was learning from Jim and our discussions, our lengthy discussions after rehearsal, which I think was just trying to explain to me what the play means. And so that was, I met you in 2007, Jim, and then I did another 2 tours and I stuck around for another season and went away and had a baby and then came back and did a couple of other seasons. And that baby, by the way, is named Catherine. And we quoted the play when she was minutes old in my arms. So she knows that she's Bonnie Kate. And this is what I have to say about you, Jim Warren, although I don't think it's embarrassing, but I think it'll be familiar to those of us who remember writing on paper, is that I still have notes on my performance, on my rehearsals, and they are on multicolored pages.
Of course they are.
So you could actually document how much I sucked and then how how that sort of changed over time, and if and when those notes lessened, it's documented all right here. Some of them in your actual handwriting.
Wow. Wow. The first three Kates were touring for Taming of the Shrew only. Jenna was a hybrid, was on a tour that also did a season in the Blackfriars. And our fifth Kate was exclusively in the Blackfriars, Sarah Fallon.
Hello, my name is Sarah Fallon. I have had the privilege of playing Kate 3 times, just like Joyce. My first one was at Colorado Shakespeare Festival in 2003. My second was the very first season of the Actors Renaissance season in 2005 with Renee Thornton Jr. as my Petruchio. And then the one that Jim directed me in was 2010 with Ben Kearns as my Petruchio. I'm sad that none of my Petruchios are here. But I think she's an absolute privilege and a joy to play. I met Jim in 2004 when he auditioned me in New York, and he brought me in for the 2004 season. And I have worked on and off at the ASC and a few other places, but mostly the ASC for the last 20 years. And I was looking through my script that I still have all my blocking and everything in here from Jim's direction. And while I was sort of reminiscing through this, I just was struck by how much I think Jim really understands this play. I think he really gets this play. I think the way that I was directed, I've loved every time that I've done it, directors or no, but I think that you really get what the heart of this play is. And that was something that I felt very strongly when I got to play it under your direction.
When you looked at that script and saw some of your blocking, did the letters WTF exist back then?
No.
Was that a phrase?
I mean, it might have been a phrase, but I didn't write it in my script.
Okay, that was very sweet of you. Thank you. Okay, so to kick us off, what I'd like to do is, not all of our questions will go to all 5 of you, but several here at the beginning will. And I'd like to go chronological again, starting with Joyce. I'd like to know some of your broad stroke thoughts about the character and the play before you played it for the SSE or ASC, and how that morphed during the production. We're gonna get to today. What do you think about the play today later? But I'm interested in what you thought about Kate beforehand and how that might have changed as we rehearsed the play. Starting with you, Joyce.
I mean, that's a great question. And the first time I played Kate, I think I was barely 21. So I had only read the play prior to rehearsal in Shakespeare class in college, and was led through that process, from the perspective of the professor, who was Ralph Cohen. And Ralph and Jim, I think, sort of hold the same thought on the play, in that it's a love story, and that can be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But it wasn't for me, because it was the first baby steps that I had ever taken and heard about it. I do remember in one rehearsal session in Anthony Seeger Hall, that we were going over 4-3, where she's been famished and she's pissed off. Well, she's always pissed off, but she was even more pissed off because she hadn't gotten any sleep or hadn't gotten any really good food. And now I really do understand that well. But I remember one moment in that rehearsal where Jim, you asked me something about, well, what would Kate do? And I was like, she's so mad. And I said, well, she'll just leave, and it's like, well, that's not in the play, and that's not what you could do in 1593, whenever you wrote the play, right? So it was important to me as an actor to not only come to my own thoughts and realizations of Kate in connection with the director, right? But also as is so important with Shakespeare, and particularly important with problem plays, is to take it in the context, understand when it was written and what was going on, right? So she is my chattel, she is my horse, she is my goods. That wasn't said to put Katerina down. That was said because that was just the fact of life. That was the way it was. And when she says the same thing, again, she's not subjugating herself any more or any less. She's just stating what would have been very common in the 16th century. So those are some thoughts. I'm sure all the other very talented ladies have many more insightful ideas.
We'll go to Margot in a second. Because we're talking to Kate's in Shrews that I directed or had a hand in, I'm guessing that in all 5 of those shows, that line about chattel was delivered in similar ways. Do y'all remember? Petruchio, it's a Petruchio line. Petruchio, Josh, you're our only Petruchio from one of my productions here. Do you remember that line and how we did it?
Well, I do remember that we took the Bible out so that we could be like, well, this is in the Bible, you guys.
We had Bible and we had it open to a verse that talks about that very stuff. So in some ways, I think that it is possible that Shakespeare is sending up that idea of what might have been typical thought at the time by some of the male chauvinists of that time. But we'll get to more of that. But yeah, Josh, I was wondering if you remembered the Bible, and I was assuming that I did that in all 5 of them. Mm-hmm. Margot, what were your thoughts about Kate prior to you being in that 94 production?
Well, I am old enough that my primary association with Taming of the Shrew was the Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor movie, which would come on TV fairly regularly, and I really loved that movie. So I always saw the story as a love story because it was Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. What was interesting for me is that coming into the process, the original director was from Shakespeare and Company, and she brought the techniques she brought in seemed to focus more on your inner truth. And in the kind of road redirection that I had with Jim, that's when my take on the play became more intellectualized, and I started tearing up the text and looking at it in a different way. And I think taking into account a lot of the things that Ralph teaches in his class. So it was a really interesting journey from one place to another.
Awesome. Natalie, what were your thoughts about Kate prior to that production?
I also, when I played Kate, which is only once, was early 20s, 21 or 22. And a memory that I have so clearly, I guess what I thought of her before I started rehearsal was really broad strokes. Like she's bold, she's difficult, I don't know what I thought at 21 or 22 years old. And then when I got into the room with Jim and with Joyce, I remember really in a beautiful way discovering, which I felt very organically, and you two were such amazing directors because you really you didn't push it. You let me and my Petruchio discover it on our own, that it was a true love story, and that we would break down the scenes in different ways. And remember Joyce telling me to lift weights, and that it was so great. And I did. It was the first time. I felt really strong. I also remember, this has stuck with me forever and ever, that and Tom Evans was my dad. And it's the scene in, okay, tell me if I'm wrong, Act 2, Scene 1. And it's the scene before Petruchio, or it's the line before Petruchio says, "For I am he who was born to tame you, Kate." And the line that he says before that is, "You'll marry nobody else but me," or "You'll marry no other man but me." It depends, I guess, which version you're looking at. And then Jim, I remember you and Joyce showed me there's different thoughts. I'm getting this kind of wrong, maybe in the first folio audition, about when my dad enters that scene. And that was so huge for me, because when Kate and Petruchio meet for the first time and he's gonna marry her, and then they meet for the first time and have this instant spark and connection, they have this instant banter and sparring match, they have a intellectual match. And then that line where he says, "For I am he who's born to tame you," if it's done, if he says, "I'm going to marry you," and then he says, "I'm going to tame you," once her dad walks in the room. So it's kind of, I just remember that very well, that he's doing it for somebody else's benefit. Although I remember we blocked it in a way that I didn't see that at the time. Kate doesn't know that.
Right.
Does that seem that up?
It does, yeah. I mean, the performative nature of both of their characters in public and in private is something you guys really dove in on. And the beauty of what we had available, if you'll remember, in Harrisonburg, Nat, was that, you know, we would sit out on the porch and the play never ended. We were always in the discussions, and having, you know, Joyce, Margot, Jim sit on that porch with us for hours, watching the chicken trucks go back and forth and talking about this relationship and the play. And I think, Jim, it might have been part of the fact that it was the 10th anniversary and that you had all these collaborators working with us, but it was just exciting and engaging, and we were learning all the way through. And every time I've done the show since, I've carried all of those sensibilities with me that I learned from all of you and your brilliant work. So
the printing practices at the time make everything about stage directions and placement of them really tricky, and there are a lot of different options. But just for all of the geekery involved, I think the two most important placement of staging directions are when does Baptista enter that scene, and when is Petruchio performing for the crowd and not just one-on-one with Kate. And the other one is the bloody daggers in I'm in my house, not a theater, in Macbeth. And the folio stage direction is that he comes on and he and Lady Mac are on stage together in the dark and can't see each other, in my opinion. And those two things completely change those scenes. And in the case of Shrew, the dynamic of what's going on in that main relationship is hugely influenced by all that. Jenna Hoban, what thoughts did you have before your SSE production? I can't remember what you had done before that. How many Kates? How many times did you play Kate?
This was my only Kate, although I think.
Okay, I'm confusing that with Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, and you were ASC by the time it was not FSE, by 2007. Although
you're right. It's 2005 that we changed the name.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that I was up for the tour that Natalie booked.
We met a long time before we found the right set of plays and the right timing and all that stuff.
And so it took me like an additional 9 years, but I did get the role. I guess, as I'm listening to all your intelligent conversation, I feel compelled to say that doing that Shrew was really pretty early in my Shakespeare experience. I had done a couple of plays before, but I don't think I was working with as experienced directors or as experienced actors, or certainly not a company of people who was approaching the work the way we were capable of doing it in our tours, and also on the Blackfriars, and employing what at the time I think we were calling Shakespeare staging conditions. So it was a very big learning experience to me. What I remember is that I really wanted to play a character who could scream and yell at people without consequence. She was even allowed to be violent. And and then I would get applause. It's things for me, I just wanted to be adored. And if I could employ those things and the audience would clap, I was like, that's the part I want. What is interesting is that I was fully unprepared for that final monologue. Totally unprepared. Loved those first couple of scenes, and I came in like ready to rock and ready to scream and yell and be violent, all of which you allowed me to do. But when we got to that final scene, I really had not, I didn't understand it. I hadn't prepared, and like personally didn't want to go there. Like I was like, oh, now we have to do this. But over the course of that rehearsal period, that was what my work was about. Like, and that's what we want. We want a character that has a journey, and we want to play that is different at the end than it is at the beginning. And so I'm answering more than you asked. What I wanted in the beginning was someone who just didn't take shit from anybody, and I was really looking forward to walk in those shoes, or in my case, thick heeled boots of a character who could do those things.
Awesome. Sarah, which number was the Shrew that we worked on together? It was number 3. So you done it in Colorado, then you did the Ren season, and then we did ours.
Correct. Yeah. So I always thought that Kate was a badass, and I always thought that she was a bit misunderstood. And I still think both of those things. I think that she does meet her match with Petruchio, and it's a journey. To find that is the person that she wants to be with. I've always thought it was a love story. And the very first time I did it in Colorado, that became even more apparent because our director, I don't want to say she wasn't interested in the love story, but it was a director who clearly did not trust the text. And my Petruchio and I had to bond off stage, away from rehearsal, in a way to try and get our story across in the midst of all these trappings that our director had put that sort of, I felt, took away from the core of the story. I mean, it was set in a 1950s drive-in movie theater, and all the place names were changed. So it was, I come to wive it wealthily in Miami. If wealthily, then happily in Miami. Just stuff like that, which was just like, it distracted. And so I really had to bond with my Petruchio in a beautiful way. And he was extremely talented, and that we both were on the same page. And since we were both on the same page, the love story, I think, came through. I wasn't an audience member, but I do believe that the love story came through in spite of all of these other things that were happening. And I think that it's not the only way to do this play, but for me, I think if you're doing the play right, it comes across as a love story, and the audience is rooting for and believes by the end of the play that Kate and Petruchio are the most likely to succeed out of the couples that you have on that stage. I believe that the audience should feel that they have the best shot of making it and being a great couple.
Picking up on audiences, staying with you here, Sarah, in performing, and I know that I'm asking for some specific memories from a long time ago.
15 years ago.
Do you remember?
Don't you complain at all, Sarah Fallon.
I'm old, Joyce. I'm old.
I'm older.
Do you remember how audiences in the Blackfriars responded to that play compared to the other plays in Rep that included Othello and
Wild Oats?
Comedy, Wild Oats and Fair Maid of the West.
Fair Maid of the West, didn't it?
Yeah. How did it feel from the stage, like it went over in the Blackfriars?
I remember that because I actually was an audience member. So
How did it go over for you?
I saw all of those plays, and nothing put a question mark for the audience. There was a lot of nervous laughter, particularly on the last scene where Kate comes out when she's explaining how her marriage works, and so there was some bold laughter from the men. There was some very there was some through the teeth from a lot of the audience members. It was the problem with this play is it's great. It doesn't matter what time you play it in. People can't help responding to it because it's funny, but it's also thought provoking, and it represents the imbalance between the sexes that still exists today. So I'm sure that everybody watches that play and thoroughly enjoys it. But then the cultural inflection that's running at the time really casts people into how should I react to this? Should I react to this play? So with all the other plays, with Othello that was going on at the time, it's an absolute classic reaction. Everybody knows. I mean, everybody can be outraged and sad and in tears about that. Wild Oats, hugely funny. John Howell. I mean, if I wasn't married to Sarah, I'd be married to John Howell. But when Shrew comes down, everybody enjoys it, but nobody leaves that. No couple leaves that play fully comfortable in their own relationship. That was my take.
Cool. Sarah, any thoughts from inside the actor playing Kate?
I think that's similar. And I think that what you have to do, especially for people maybe who aren't familiar with the play, they're seeing Shrew for the first time. That's something that as an actor who's been doing this for so long, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, this is the first Caesar that somebody has seen, or this is the first Shrew. You know, I've done it several times, but you have to remember that not everybody knows how it's going to end. And I think that, it always felt like I had to get them on board, you know, at the beginning of that. You have to really, like, they're not sure about what she's saying. And I do believe it's sincere. I don't think that's the only way to play it. I think you can totally do it tongue in cheek. I think you can make it about the money. I think you can do all those things, but I always felt like I had to get the audience on board with me. And you didn't cut any of that speech, that last speech. I did it in its entirety. I don't know that if the other Kates did as well, probably. Yeah, which is great because I think you need that time. I think you need that time to actually get the audience on board with you and sort of lay out, like, this is who we are now. And this is who we are as a couple in this moment on display for people as well. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors for us, but this is who we are in front of all of you right now. And I always felt like it was kind of like, all right, here we go. But they eventually got there. I felt that anyway, in it.
Sarah, I'm curious. You mentioned getting people on board, and this is a question for all of you. Since you're playing a character that is being described as being unlikable, and you immediately have to try to get the audience on your side a little bit, I'm curious how you found a way into that, and also how much does your Bianca play into that and your relationship there, since that's the first thing we see.
That was something that I was really interested, especially in the two later Kates that I played. I was really interested in showing other sides of her that weren't just angry and mean and vicious. I think that when he doesn't show up for the wedding, I think she's truly hurt. I think even though she doesn't think that she wants to marry this guy, I think that she's truly heartbroken. When she says, you know, I told you he was a frantic fool, hiding his bitter jest and blunt behavior, all of that, when she's there and she's dressed for the wedding and he's not there yet, I think that breaks her heart. So I think those moments, if you can find those moments for Kate, where she's showing some emotion that's not just that veneer of anger and of lashing out, but where she's truly hurt. And I think that if you can find those little pockets throughout, that makes it easier for the audience to get on board with her and see her as a human and not just one that's angry and lashing out all the time. Jenna wants
your Bianca.
Jenna was my Bianca too, so she could probably talk to the Bianca as well. She was my Bianca in the 2010.
And she was your hero.
She was not my hero.
Oh, was she not?
No.
Oh.
I'm everybody's hero.
Well, yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, I missed the trick there. Of course she's my hero.
Okay. I love all of this. I could talk about it for days and days and days. And I agree with Sarah. There are these other levels, and we can't ignore, and I can't believe it's taken us 30 minutes to get here, but the word witch and that how charming that is. And although we've got the family scenes, but then with the introduction of Petruchio, she gets to show off her wit. And Tom, this is an answer to your question about how do you get the audience on your side. For me, it was like wit. Like you land one of those lines, you turn out to the audience. My favorite thing to do is just, am I right? You know,
You found the right company, Jenna.
Yeah, I did. But it's, you know, and it would generally it would be the women in the crowd that were like, yeah, go get it. But this brings me to, and I don't want to get too far off track because I do have memories of the Blackfires and being on tour. But it brings me to this story that I discovered in my journal. And this was October of 2007. And we were touring at a high school, Powhatan, Virginia. Is that a place? Am I saying it right? Powhatan. Okay. So I'm quoting from a 22-year-old journal. It says, this show was wild. I also got to tell you, our weapons were pool noodles, like foam, right? Okay. The show was wild. Those whacker noodles were everywhere and not unemployed. Josh and I felt good about the show. Our storyline intact and the kids following our journey closely helped. I managed to get the kids on my side pretty early. And by my side, I mean as a character, not necessarily against Petruchio. The kids were rooting for us as a team. The best moment had to be Josh's line, "Come sit on me," which elicited an uproar. And out of the uproar, I simply did one long take to the audience. From that, a kid on our stage right audience section presented me with a whacker noodle on perfect cue. Still, I held. I did my take. I waited. Shouts of "Do it," erupted. And just as the applause came down, I topped their sound with "Asses are made to bear, and so are you." And we were off and running again. So this is the benefit of keeping these stupid books for as long as I have. But that's what I think Sarah means, like, to get them on the side. And a lot of it is not a tangible thing. It's a vibe in the room. Some of it is really obvious, when they're really obviously shouting like this. And when that young man came out of the audience, walked right into the scene with no embarrassment, like nothing. It was just like, this is my cue to help this lady out.
Vibing off of that, Margot, Joyce, Natalie, thoughts on any particular performances or venues that you remember to add on to what we were just talking about?
Well, before we started this, you and I talked about how I think it is the only time in the history of this company. On my tour, we played a prison. We took Taming of the Shrew into an actual prison that had a riot 2 days before.
Wow.
And I remember that, all the actors in the parking lot. And this was Tom Berger's brilliant idea about how we were going to use Shakespeare to change the world. And so, we were all in our 20s and we were going to change the world. So everybody is in the parking lot, and Jim, in his very democratic way, takes a vote. Are we going to do this show or not? Because they've just had a riot and a couple folks are uncomfortable, but we are booked and they are bringing all of their prisoners into this large open space where we're about to perform Shrew. And
they did tell us that this is actually perhaps the safest environment you could be doing this play in here, because everybody's on higher alert, that there's more people around because of the uproar. It was a medium security, so it wasn't low security, but it wasn't high security. But I also felt like I couldn't just make our actors do this after this riot. That the company needed their buy-in. The show needed their buy-in. So go ahead, Margot. I don't remember what happened with the vote.
Well, and for perspective's sake, I now work in the legal department of a jail. So I really understand what medium security means. And I don't know if I would have voted the way I did if I had known back then, but I didn't. At any rate, we did the show. And Mike Petruchio and I had a lot of issues. Our run was super rocky. Our interpersonal dynamic was not great. But in that show, the entire troupe, we were united in, you know, telling this story and telling the story of basically being silenced by society around you, not being able to be yourself, having all of these prescribed rules and things that keep you down, keep you where you belong, and do not give you voice. And so we did the show and we all told the story as Jim directed. And I remember at the very end, prisoners coming up to different people and talking about, hey man, I got that. The idea that you have to kind of learn how to do it in the system. And it was very, very powerful. That experience was unique and very, very powerful, because I feel like we actually did the thing you want to do when you're on tour and you're in your 20s. We changed the world.
Any memorable venues, Nat and Joyce, that you can remember?
Hey, it's Mary, and I've never done it, but hey, Margot, you did change the world, and we're also grateful.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
I do. I even for it being so long ago, there's a number of performances that I do remember from our off Broadway show in New York City on West 42nd Street to our final show outdoor in a park in Winchester. But there's one that really comes top to mind, and it was our only and SSE's first midnight show. And I believe, Jim, keep me honest, I think that was at Dartmouth. Do you remember if that was correct?
It was at Centenary.
Okay.
And it became a ritual. We did it every year after that.
And I know, because I was on tour when I went back to Stanton with the when you guys were ASC, I went on tour and there was a number of midnight shows. But this was the first midnight show. And we had no idea if it was going to be a success. And we were playing in sort of a student union, and the student union was two stories. And where we were performing, the second story was cut out and they had railings up above. So you could stand up on the second floor and look down into the space where we happened to be performing.
That was Dartmouth.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
So we don't know how this is going to go. We start at midnight. It was like, okay. And the place was packed. It was packed. And looking back, I'm like, it's a college campus. Of course it was packed. Of course it was packed. But it was so electric. My memory of this is that it is so electric. And you guys know how that feeds back and forth with the cast. And we were crackling. It was awesome. And I remember being able to look up to the second story of everybody hanging over on these railings, looking down and making eye contact with them and seeing how engaged they were and seeing how invested they were. And it was just thunderous. It was just thunderous applause at the end. It was a huge success. It was a great night, except for one person. And it was our Grumio. And Mike, do you remember
Mike is looking at you questioningly, like, I'm not sure I remember this. What did I have done?
Do you remember? Tell the story, but you're here. Do you remember? Okay, so you can kill me later. So in 4-3, when Grumio is taunting Kate and she has had enough, and the script says she beats him, we had it staged that I grab Mike by the crotch. And as everybody knows, you don't really grab anybody. I'm going to turn this over to you. Yeah. You don't really grab anybody. You just place your hand, and then I led him around the stage. And you had made a switch that night that was unbeknownst to me. And would you like to continue the story?
No. Keep going. I'm gonna add to the end.
Okay. So unbeknownst to me, Mike had chosen that performance to wear boxers as opposed to presumably his normal tighty whities. And so when I placed my hand and led him around the stage, there was more room in the inn, and it was more impactful. I wasn't doing anything differently, and I didn't know. He was still wearing jeans and everything, but I didn't know. But his face was a little different, and I led him around the stage, and we finished the scene. And I think it was at the end of the show, because we're moving along, and at the end of the show, you came up to me and you said, I made a change tonight and I wore boxers and I will never do that again. And we laughed about it. I think I laughed harder than you. I'm sorry about that. But over to you.
No, that's what I remember about performing with you. That was like really my first experience with like performing with a real actor, right? That like Charlie Tucker and I, like, that was a rock and roll kind of, like, we were just beating each other. Like, I spent the whole show thinking about where am I supposed to be? What's my cue? Like, those sorts of things. But like, Joyce is an actor that like is present, is in the moment, is listening to you. And the thing that always freaked me out about being on stage with Joyce was that she really saw you. And like, as a 20-year-old dude, like, I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to have any, and nobody knows me. And like, you couldn't play a scene like that with Joyce. That like, she saw everything. And that, I just remember what was even weirder about that moment was that like, I wasn't really looking, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on, but you were 100% looking at me. And the look on your face as you registered the change. And then as I'm like, what's going on? Why is she? Oh, that was quite a night.
So yeah, I remember that show.
Natalie, would you like to add on to that?
I can't beat that story.
In this, no, I'm not going to go there. You're welcome, Mike. Joyce, talking about some of the pivotal moments in the script and things that we did in our productions. You were talking to me as we were prepping for this about what we did in rehearsals and exploring Sun and the Moon. That scene in 4-5 where Petruchio is trying to get Kate to look at the sun and call it the moon. And he had a particular thing that he did there, and that had an impact on what you did in later parts. I'm not sure how many different times after we did that the first time in '89. I'm not sure how many times I stole that in the others, but you want to talk a little bit about that one?
I wish I could remember whose idea that was, Jim, but Sun and the Moon, and it is the moon, no, it's the sun, right? And it is the sun, no, it is the moon. And we inserted a howl. So Petruchio howls, it's the moon, ow, and then Kate followed suit with that when she decides that it's the moon as well. And I think depending on the show, I'm trying to remember, Jim, if we inserted that howl again near the end, maybe I don't remember if it was I don't think it would have been during the speech, but perhaps it was, come Kate Will to bed. Ooh, but Natalie, I'm pretty sure we inserted it with you too, because once we found that, it just really felt like a gem. Did we give that to you guys too for your tour? Oh, and Jenna had it too.
Well, and part of what it served was, in the moment, Petruchio being big and howling at the moon. But it was part of Petruchio trying to get Kate to play with him, call the sun the moon. You don't have to be confined by your society and what society says. You can do shit any fucking way you want to do it. That's how you can take all of that energy that you've been spending beating on people, and how you can truly do what Kate says she wants to do, which is be free in words.
Yeah.
And so the way that the Petruchio did the howl was his expression of, I can fuck with shit. So as soon as Kate started to say, I can fuck with shit too, then she adopted that that howl. And yeah, I think that we put it in with the old man when you call after you called him the Virgin, and we stuck it someplace near the end. It wasn't during the final speech, but somewhere.
And
in
it's
there.
also, it's just this great little gimmick. Quite frankly, it's a great gimmick to get the audience to follow along a little bit more closely in case somebody was going, what really is going on here, you know? And it was very useful, and it was just made for a great time. Another element of fun.
Other Kate, anything in your Sun and the Moon scene where you start to play with Petruchio that you found memorable enough to say anything about?
Is that the scene? I remember the howl, and I remember my mind being blown, discovering that the game with Jim and with Joyce and CJ, who played Petruchio. Is that, my God, my memory, was that scene their first kiss?
No. Kiss Me Kate is late. I think Kiss Me Kate is the first kiss, which is in 5-1.
Yeah, but doesn't that come in after he gets the game, Jim? Isn't that like?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path from our production, Natalie. I'll have to think it through, but it came out of that moment when he saw her start to get it and play along. That's when the kiss happened, Jim. Maybe I'll have to go back and think it through. But Nat, I think your memory's in the right spot on that one.
I remember that, but I
don't remember there being another kiss before Kiss Me Kate. Gemma, you directed the play. Do you remember?
Yeah, there's a kiss much earlier when he first proposes.
Yes.
Sort of forced kiss usually that happens in that scene.
Or a non-kiss that he says.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says Kiss Me Kate there. You're right. Right before the wedding. And I know that at least one or two of the ones we did, he got the finger instead of a kiss.
I would be surprised, respectfully, Tom and Natalie, I would be surprised if we added a kiss there, because 5-1 is the first real consensual mutual kiss. And I'm not sure, even if I came up with this silly idea to insert a kiss earlier, if Jim would have let me. So thank you for, everybody knows, y'all were laughing. I saw it. Thank you very much. So I think you guys may be conflating that with 5-1, because 5-1 is such do you mind if I go here now, Jim?
Yeah, go ahead.
5-1 is such a significant scene, the end of that, and it's 9 lines right at the end of that scene. So Kate and Petruchio have come back to Padua, and they see Bianca, and she's already gone off and gotten married and come back, and now it looks like she's getting in trouble, right? So Kate and Petruchio slink off to the side to watch what's happening in the shadows. And as everybody leaves, and Kate comes out and says, husband, let's follow to see the rest of this ado. And that's when he says, first kiss me, Kate. What, in the street? No, art thou ashamed of me? God forbid, not ashamed, but ashamed to kiss. All right, well, let's go back. No, I'll kiss you. And then it's, now pray thee, love, stay. So in 9 lines, Kate has called Petruchio husband and has called him love. And that, for me, is the crux of why you cannot deny that this is a love story. And that, for me, in each of the productions, I remember I really locked into that, because that helped me. That's the linchpin and the bridge that gets me to 5-2 and 44 lines of a speech that blows Petruchio away. And he can't even say anything. He can't stammer anything at the end, but what? There's a wench. So 5-1 is really significant to me. And that kiss is really, really important in my opinion.
Joyce, I think you're right. And now that I'm thinking back, Natalie, the transition that you had on then God be blessed, it is the blessed Son, but Son it is not when you say it is not. It was the discovery of the game happened for you in that moment. And when you got to the end, and so it shall be for Catherine, you guys did come together and took hands, but I don't think you actually kissed until later.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. But it's that feeling of I remember that feeling of being Kate, and that's the first I think time she really wanted to kiss him. That maybe that's what I'm remembering.
There you go. I'd buy that.
Let's jump from there into in your brain, Sarah Fallon, 3 times that you did it, getting to what your Kate thought about that final speech. How similar or different were those 3?
I think they all there were shades of difference because my Petruchios were different, right? Each and every one of my Petruchios was amazing, but each and every one of my Petruchios was different. And so I feel lucky, and you have to approach that. Like, I do believe that how he serves her up right before that speech, I think Petruchio can do a lot there with how he is asking her and while telling her to say this thing. But I think that I think that Petruchio can deliver that in a way that is still in playing with this game, still on board with the discoveries that we've made as a couple and how we can work together for this prize. And so I think that that's really important, like how your Petruchio serves that up for you. And I think that in that moment, they are both giving each other a gift. I think that last speech is Kate giving a gift to Petruchio, and this whole journey, we're now on board with each other. And I think that I think that, that we finally see that they are one. They are one.
They're a team.
They're a team, and they understand each other, and they understand how to play this game together. And I think I think even though Petruchio doesn't have a whole lot to say to Kate before she launches into her whole diatribe, I think the way that is delivered to her can be so yummy.
And
And
isn't
set-
that beautiful?
and set
He's
her
not
up.
asking for a diatribe. He's saying is put her in her place. He's
Yeah.
not. I don't think he's expecting 44 lines of actually, fantastic fucking stuff that's going to.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I don't think so either. I think she rocks his world a little bit there.
Agreed.
Jenna Hoban, we had talked about that moment a little bit beforehand. Anything you want to add to that?
I did.
Yeah.
I don't. Sarah said it beautifully. I'm not gonna add to that.
Margot, anything? You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm in total agreement. And I remember that as we were diving into the play on the road, realizing that is I think the only moment in the play where she really does open her mouth and speak. For the most part, she's silenced over and over and over again by someone or something. And this is the one point when she is given, he offers her the stage and she just freaking takes it. And it's such a beautiful testimony to the journey. And I think that it is the thing that seals the deal as far as their relationship and her not being asked to give up who she is, but learning how to be who she is in that space, which I think when you look at the character Petruchio and how completely off the wall he is, he's already figured that out. I mean, clearly he is able to do what he wants coming in, and she learns it over the course of the play through her relationship with him. And I think that final speech really brings that point home.
Part of what we talked about in all 5 of those productions is that when Petruchio calls the old man a woman and corrects Kate and says, embrace her, she not only calls him, the old man, a her, but she takes it a step further and goes into young budding virgin and keeps going. So it's like, not only did she decide to play along, but I think the term I probably used for all of you was she begins to out Petruchio. And then Shakespeare, in my opinion, seems to have done that on purpose, because then when Petruchio serves up the tell these headstrong women what duty they owe their lords and husbands, as one of you said, Sarah, you said it, that he probably didn't expect 44 lines. And then it becomes, well, the young budding virgin is obviously sending that thing up. Nice, Gemma.
Yeah, that's
TV.
awesome, Gemma.
But then you start to question, how much is she out Petruchioing Petruchio? How much does she believe? How much does she believe in the stuff she says about the teammate that she has created, the team that Petruchio and she has created? And I'm also pretty sure that I said at one point to all five of you, I'm not sure the audience should know the answer to all of the things you say in that final speech. How many of those things do you, Kate, believe in? How many of those things are you goosing, like you did with Young Budding Virgin? And so that's part of what I think makes that last speech something that is between the two of them. And an audience might read it different ways. Two people sitting next to each other might think, oh my God, she has now become the Elizabethan ideal wife who thinks women are subjects to their husbands. And somebody else might be thinking, that's not what she's saying. That letting that mystery breathe there, I think, is more interesting than saying she's been beaten down or she doesn't mean any of it and she's just saying, fuck you. So Jenna Hoban has raised a hand.
Okay, so I actually have something documented about this final moment, if I can share. So this was at that same high school, but it was the next day. And I wrote that the high school girls were much harder to win over. One of them added, psych, to the end of one of my lines in my final speech. Was it graceless traitor to her loving lord? I was able to direct, I am ashamed that women are so simple, right to her and her friend almost directly after. Then we got varying calls in the silence. After Josh's final kiss me Kate, before the kiss came, some cried, do it. And I think it was also that day when they also commanded, hit him. Still, the kiss was received with applause and the curtain call had them on their feet. An email came to us that said a teacher overheard a student say, was that really Shakespeare?
Wow. I wanna be able to shift the conversation into letting folks ask questions that are not just me or Tom. And to get there, I want to give all five of you the ability to say something brief-ish about, do you think, I mean, all of you played this role, but you also played it a few years ago. And every era changes a little bit. And certainly where we are in 2025, particularly after the Me Too movement, and I mean, not that it's the same thing, but Black Lives Matter and social justice and things that have made theater makers in particular look at the art form differently in some ways. Do you look at this play differently in 2025 than you did back when you were younger?
Hey, Jim, it's Mary.
Yes.
And
Hi,
I just,
Mary.
hey, and I just want to say my daughter Jane, who many of you know, for her, like, whatever big project at Kenyon College, did a cross-gender casting of The Taming of the Shrew. And most of the regular drama students didn't want to be involved. And so she ended up with a Kate who was the quarterback of the Kenyon football team. Now, Kenyon never won a football game the whole time she was there. So, I mean, but and there was a little blonde actress that played Petruchio, and it was a whole interesting dynamic between those two. And I would argue if it had flipped and there was, a strong white man picking on a black woman, it would have been a whole different dynamic. But as it was fascinating, and I've always been so grateful to that young man who was willing to be Kate in
Nice.
in that production. And so I don't know what it means, except it brought an additional dimension, at least to me.
Thank you for sharing that, Mary. That's and yeah, thinking that this play was written for a boy to play that woman, and then having that switch with the genders of the actors switching. There's all kinds of interesting things that happen because of that.
Hey, Jim, I don't know if you noticed Gemma's comment, but Jim, I'd love for you to speak on that for a second, if you wouldn't mind. I would be fascinated to hear.
No, I didn't. No, thank you, Gemma.
Sure. You were asking about sort of how it changes over time, and especially in response to Me Too and Black Lives Matter, and the overturning of Roe v. Wade, just like I happened to be doing it then, and so it was really strange. This is not the production I did for ASC, by the way. I've directed this 4 times. ASC was my second, so this was actually my 4th, and they had asked me to also rewrite the induction, which I'm surprised nobody talked about in all of this. I was surprised you didn't bring that up, Jim. I was the first thing you said to me.
On my list, but I put it further down, and because Tom played Sly, I was trying to avoid it. Yeah.
But I was asked to write a new induction. So we took out Sly, and I wrote an induction that was a contemporary induction for it. And so I was able to put some stuff in there, but the idea of sort of mimicking or mocking female bodily autonomy during that time period was really, really hard for me. And we ended up having to, I had to write into the induction sequences, because there were many of them. They threaded through the whole play in this context, and so we had 2 characters who were only ever the induction, and they stayed on stage and interacted through the whole thing. And I ended up writing stuff in where I had to actually have them say, they were both women, have them say to each other things like, "You get to make that decision. That is your choice." Like, just to put it into the script itself, so that we never felt like this might be okay. And you were talking earlier about the idea of about letting that last Kate's big speech, about sort of letting it live in the I don't really know what she believed, and I could not do that in that production at all. So it was very clear that Kate was mocking all of them, and was particularly sort of driving things home to the men on stage, who sort of started by going like, "Yeah," and then started going, "Wait a minute, she's totally making fun of me right now." And so it slowly, you watched them sort of, the light bulb turn on for them, so that there was never any question from the audience that Kate and Petruchio collectively were just making fun of all of the bullshit gender bias that was on that stage and in those characters, because I couldn't let it just, you can't, in that context, you can't let it be like, maybe it's okay to take away all of the rights of the women. So and I think I might have been more comfortable with the gray areas before that, but at that point I just couldn't be.
Gotcha. Yeah. Kate, any thoughts on that?
I keep going back to this question of it was answered earlier about getting the audience on your side as Kate. And in my head, I think I remember this in my early 20s. I never kind of felt like I had to get the audience on my side, which was so much freedom for me as somebody, as a young woman, to realize the way that Kate is described by other people is not actually who she is. And if she has anger, and if she has rage, and if she has frustration at where she is in her life, just by the fact that she's a woman and an older daughter with a pain in the ass younger sister, that I didn't feel, I felt two things. I didn't feel like she was an angry person necessarily. I felt like she was smarter. She was the smartest one in the room. And if there was rage, that's okay. And the audience had to deal with it. Didn't think she was an angry person necessarily, but I think that shying away from the anger, I think she just, to me, it was more of trusting somebody enough to let herself be vulnerable with them, which I found to be the beauty of the play.
And can't that all be true too, Natalie, that she is the smartest person in the room, and she's pissed sometimes, and she, that she doesn't have to fit into this perfect little idea of what we think she should look like as a woman in this time. I think that all of that can play true, and I completely agree with you that most of the things that are said about her are not actually what are at her core. They're not what actually makes Kate Kate. It's what Kate has been, a reaction to the things that Kate has been presented with up until this point. And I think that all of those things live together in her, and that's what makes her so complex and so delicious to live in for a while. And as far as like doing this play in 2025, it kind of blew my mind when I was thinking, oh, wow, the last time that I did this play was 15 years ago. Because it doesn't feel like that, of course. But the world has changed a lot. And I know that people in theaters are shying away from doing certain Shakespeare's. And this certainly isn't the only one that is being, cast as a problem play that we don't do anymore. I think, for me, I think what a tragedy to not put this story out here, even if you don't agree with the story. This and all art, I think, should be about provoking conversation and making people think, and maybe people re-examine what they think about gender roles or what they think about relationships and all of those things. I think this play is such a perfect vehicle for that. And if audiences are leaving talking about it and talking about these things, then we're doing our jobs as artists. And I think that, when I think about all the couples that I know, everybody's got their own shit. Like, whatever you think is the ideal couple, you have no idea what's going on with those two people, what they're presenting to the world. And getting to be in Kate and Petruchio's world, we get to see behind the curtain. We get to see the flaws. We get to see how they get to where they are, and it's not perfect. And is it the best way to go about it? I don't know. Petruchio says, he that knows better how to tame a shrew, he's doing what he thinks is best, and they're on their journey. And every relationship in the world has their own shit, and Kate and Petruchio are no different.
I love that, Sarah.
Yes.
And I propose that perhaps it's more important than ever for this play to be produced. This play sets up the paradox of Petruchio does not humiliate Kate. He does not verbally put her down. Her father does that. Her sister does that. All of the other men in, well, I hate using imperatives, but so many of the other men in the play do that, right? They call her all those names. And he says, even if it is in the beginning in jest, right? Which we know it's kind of in jest, Bonnie Kate, sweet Kate, sometimes Kate the cursed, but Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, right? And the paradox is he's using words to build her up and to help to take down the temperature and to help to let her move forward a little bit without, I do think that I love that, Benjamin. I find Report a very liar. Yes, he says that. And so you have that on one side. And on the other side, Petruchio is teaching her that words don't matter. Sticks and stones may break my bones, right? And that you can say whatever you want. The sun is the moon. That's not a man, it's a young budding virgin. And it is this paradox that creates this partnership and this freedom. And I think, Margot, going back, I loved your story about the prison, and to have these prisoners here to learn about this paradox and hear how words can sort of set you free, and playing along with the game or being a diplomat can put you in a better place for yourself and in the world. Because so many of them, when she says, the other crystal clear moment for me, with Kate, is the tongue will tell the anger of my heart, or else my heart concealing it will break. She is carrying all this stuff, and she is frustrated, in my opinion, and she is angry. And Petruchio is teaching her how to be free amidst all this. And hopefully in that freedom, you can dissipate some of that anger and that frustration. But I think there's a lot of anger and frustration these days, and I think especially for women. And I think that this is a great time, perhaps, to produce the play.
Hoban.
I agree. I love all that. And that lines, or else concealing it will break, was really my key to the character. And I just wanted to make this other point, that whether it's the prisoner that is being silenced, whether it's a female that's being silenced, whether it's any other, any person being silenced, is one of the issues. But I think one of the other things to pay attention to is the concept of emotion, and that there's all this talk about her emotion being unacceptable. And I just feel like I have lived my entire 50 years with an unacceptable amount of emotion. So it's probably part of what attracted me to the role. And I think, in answer to your original question, Jim, I think that's why I still find it attractive. I still find the play, sorry, New York City, noisy. I find the play attractive. I find the relationship attractive. And, if we can have these conversations on stage in a play, we're really dead as a society. So yeah, I think we have to do them and let people, let our audience bandia. They can, talk about it, banter through it as much as they need to afterwards. Maybe we should take it to the Kennedy Center.
Yes.
Okay, we're running out of time. Tom, 5 minutes or less. For those folks that don't know what we're doing in Connecticut, what are we doing in Connecticut?
We are building the American Globe Center, which is a combination of a recreation of Shakespeare's 1614 Globe Theater alongside a modern performing arts and education center, in which we will use Shakespeare's staging conditions, especially shared light, music, actors in repertory, in order to create the world's biggest destination theater. And that is what we are setting out to do. So that's even less than 5 minutes, Jim. But we're going to change the face of economic development, education, and entertainment in Connecticut and across the country.
Let's go to Kim's question and then Ildy's question. Or hand raised, maybe it's a comment, not a question. Kim, you go first.
Thanks, Jim. Just to kind of add to Tom's less than 5 minutes, I joined Stageable yesterday.
Thank you.
And that should be definitely mentioned because it's a good way to support the project. But I want to say a huge thank you to especially the 5 Kates. And I will, for the rest of my life, keep Badassery of Kates as the collective. My history with Taming of the Shrew is I did it once in a very traditional directed production, and very traditional up to and including the director wanting me to carry a whip. which I think was a thing that Lunton Fontanne started. And I was dead set against the idea until it occurred to me that at the end of the scene where Kate and Petruchio first meet, and she's made an impression on him that he wasn't expecting, that he visibly throws the whip away. The second time I did it was a full-on cue script, unrehearsed production. And Sarah, I think it was you that was talking about production where you had to spend some time with your Petruchio kind of outside of rehearsal trying to build a connection. The Kate that I worked with in this unrehearsed production had done an unrehearsed season previously. This was my first one. And she knew how to find every important piece of information, every clue from her text, and knew how far to go with me never having rehearsed something. And it just put me in Petruchio's, what I think is Petruchio's actual situation, that he, number one, plays all these games, then they're predominantly word games. He immediately finds out that in their initial meeting that Kate is as good as he is at it, but he spends the rest of the play learning that she's actually better. And where she really got me, and I loved that this happened in front of an audience. We'd already had the setup with Grimio and Curtis doing the banter with the servants, away you 3-inch fool. So we've already had that setup. When she got to the end of the big speech at the end of the play, veil your stomachs for it is no boot, place your hands below your husband's foot. As she's walking towards me and beginning to kneel, she stopped and put her hand on my knee and stood up, and her hand kept going upwards as she says, place your hand below, yada, yada, yada. And I'm in front of the audience going, oh, shit. Which meant there was a whole different energy behind, now there's the wench. Come on and kiss me, Kate. And I've never been able to see the play as anything other than that, than a love story. That's what it is at its root. It takes a pretty bizarre path in places, but that kind of thing just kind of cements it. And the third time I dealt with the play was in grad school, and there was a faculty member that upbraided me in the corridor for having the temerity to want to stage that play. And it's very gratifying to hear the five of you basically saying, no, that's not how we should be looking at the play. And I agree with that. Even in today's environment, there is so much to be said about relationship dynamics in that play. And one of the things that I think gets overlooked a lot, at the point in the play where I think Petruchio comes as close as possible to almost abusing her, which is denying her sleep and food, his best friend, he's called Hortensio, my best beloved and approved friend, is the one that steps in and says, "Fie, Signor Petruchio, you are to blame. Come, Mistress Kate, I'll bear you company." And it's telling men something about their dynamics. Like, listen to your friend when you cross the line, when you're going a little too far. So I think that the play absolutely needs to be performed today. Thank you, and I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Kim. Ildi, what you got?
Yes, I mean, it's so refreshing to hear you guys talk about this play like a game between lovers as they get to know each other, because yes, as Kim says, unfortunately it's quite a dominant view in some places that the play shouldn't be done at all, and quite high profile people saying that in the theatre world in England and also in the academia, it can be, to be honest, quite intimidating to face that view, and just to say that, okay, just do your play analysis or just stage it, and your view will change. So it was really fun and very gratifying to listen to you guys. The Taming of the Shrew was the second play I directed in with a visible audience all around. And my question relates to that. You guys mentioned taking lines and reactions out to the audience really effectively and memorably. So my question is the opposite. In what ways do you think that the play actually depends on having a visible audience around? Does the fact that everything you do takes place in a public environment, which is the theatrical reality, not the imaginative reality always, but the theatrical one, does that shape what you need to do on stage, and therefore does that feed into this action and the dynamic? And then there's also the question of Sly, of how is that's a spatial question as well.
Those are amazing questions, Lily. And I think that, obviously the Kates can answer that better than I, but what I found in working in these staging conditions is that because we're playing that game and we have to let the audience in on the secret, sharing that with them in the shared light is the most important piece. So I think you're right. And I actually never thought about it, but even in a film version, right, it's hard to have that wink to the audience because they're not acknowledging you sharing that. So I think you're spot on that when the audience is in the dark, they are in the dark about the whole situation because there can't be that connective tissue. One of the interesting things is the, thus have I politically begun my reign speech. And that really is Petruchio's opportunity to truly share what he's trying to do and make it clear to the audience that I'm not mistreating Kate just to mistreat her. I mean, he says, all this is done in reverent care of her. He has a goal, right? It's not to tame her, it's to tame the world around her. And he wants to, or at least free her from feeling that, One of the fun things in that line that always strikes me in that monologue is the concept of stoop, right? Because I think he says, until she stoops, a falcon now is sharp and passing empty. Until she stoop, she must not be full gorged. Stooping in falconry is not bowing. It's not kneeling. It's diving at your prey as hard and as fast as you can. And she stoops to conquer is also a similar vein in that play. So people forget sometimes that a lot of the imagery that we see in a certain light has under second meanings and double currents, and being able to share that with the audience directly. And even, Jim, we would do a fair amount of this, as I recall. Sometimes we give a little bit of assisted gestures, not saw the air, but we give some assisted gestures to help people understand what usage of the word we were bringing to the table. And if we know what we're saying, which, a lot of people just don't, but if we know what we're saying, it becomes clear to the audience. So, but I'll kick it over to the Kates. I mean, how did you guys feel about, have any of you done the show without shared light?
So my first time at Colorado Shakes, it's not exactly shared light. The show starts at 8, right? And it's not completely dark yet. In Colorado, it is outdoors. So you can see the first couple of rows for a bit of time, but it's not directed that way, and there's not, that it's nothing like the ASC. So you're not meant to be including them in direct address in the way that we do it at the American Shakespeare Center. And that probably also fed into how much I needed to connect with my Petruchio and figure, because we also didn't have that other avenue of connecting and giving our story and giving the love story. We didn't have that access that we have at the ASC or other places that do shared light. Not enough, in my opinion, when it comes to Shakespeare, because there's just a real difference. And if you ignore the fact that we're including the audience, what a missed opportunity. And there are so many gems that they give you. And even by not giving you anything, sometimes when you look directly at an audience member and they just kind of go, and they don't give you anything, often that is also something that you can play off of. So the opportunities are endless when we're including them in this story, and the things that I have learned from them, in rehearsals, when I first, they don't train you. I went to grad school for this, but they're not training you to do direct audience contact. And so when I came to the ASC for the first time, I had to learn how to do all of this. I didn't know how to do it. And it's something that you can try and figure out in rehearsal. Like, what is this going to be when I actually give a line to an audience member? But you don't know what that's going to be until you actually do it. And then you're constantly honing that craft and figuring out how to make the most of those moments and not derail the whole thing too. It's like, it's a tricky balance. And it's one that I'm still, every time that I am on that stage, I'm learning how to best use that. And so I miss it. I think it's been a long time since I've done Shakespeare in the Dark, and I think I would really miss it. I think I would miss seeing those faces and being able to interact.
That's awesome, Sarah. Thank you. Natalie, can I ask you a quick question, just because I'm super curious? Having grown up in this style and some of your early roles being very much in the face of the audience, to then have to translate that into a very smaller, quieter film and television thing, what do you keep from those experiences, and what do you have to let go of a little bit to still communicate in the same way? I'm curious.
Such a good question. I mean, I think all of it is I
totally put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Not at all. No, it's a good question. I think I get asked a lot about the difference between theater acting and film acting, and I try not to look at them as two different animals. Honestly, it's the same. To me, it's the same. But I think what I have taken with my time when it was Shenandoah Shakespeare Express and that young age, it's just learning how to read a room. No matter what room you're going into, whether you're still an actor or not, learning how to read a room. And I think that having direct address with the audience, just as Sarah was saying as well, whether audiences, I mean, I've done a lot of plays since then, and it has not been direct address with the audience, not Shakespeare. But the audience is still a character in the plays, whether I can see their faces or not, whether they're in the dark or not. The theater is the theater because they're a part of that production, dark or light. So having the direct address with the audience, to me, that's whether you're on a film set, whether you're engaging with your other actor, whether you're engaging with your crew, or you're engaging with your audience in a play, or your ensemble, or whatever, your director. It's just being able to read a room and be a part of a team. That to me is what I take away the most from my time.
Ensemble, right?
Hoping you had a thought. Did I read your hand right?
Yeah. I was thinking about that. When we were talking about the experience of doing it with an audience that's present, and they're present, and they know that they are in the room, and that it is a learning process, which Sarah alluded to, and what Natalie said about, you just got to read the room over time. And that I had the privilege of doing it for so long, because Shrew was the first thing we staged, and it was a 9 or 10 month deal. And there was one moment that I remember I didn't know would be there until I was in the Blackfriars Playhouse. And that's, and Jim, you had mentioned maybe talking about this distressed wedding dress. And in our production, I had duplicate dresses, one that was Christine White, and then I had to do a quick change into this battered, terrible looking dress, which the lovely Josh Carpenter that was a quick change that he had to employ, because we made our next entrance through the house. I think I've got this right. And so I came in bedraggled. That gave the audience a great deal to laugh at, which gave me a great deal to get pissed at. And as we went through the audience, I was sort of paraded in all of this drudgery. And I got to develop a relationship with these people. as I went, and they just made them laugh harder and harder. It just made me angrier and angrier. And then one day I passed this guy and he was just beside himself. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And then they all started laughing. It was great. It was a great moment. But like Sarah said, you also have to be careful that you don't do, it's not the Jenna Hoban show. I love that show, but that's not what it is. We had a wonderful time doing it. The dresses were made by Aaron West. I loved those costumes, and I got to wear my Harley boots with them through the whole show, and so I was in the wedding dress with my Harley boots on too. I just thought I should mention that.
I want to pick up on what Kim said and ask Benjamin Reed to talk for a quick second about Stageable. But before we get there, that idea of a distressed wedding dress thing to do in arriving at Petruchio's house. Joyce Pfeiffer, what did we do when we had no budget in the second show of the SSE?
I had found, I think at People's Department Store, a white sundress. It was like t-shirt material with a little flounce skirt, all one little dress. And we bought two, and I rolled one in the mud and kept the other one as clean as I could.
And the mud one, at least for part of that run, it was in a mud bucket backstage. So it was fresh mud.
Why didn't we use makeup? Jim, I've been thinking about this because I remember in Winchester going out to the parking lot and grabbing a handful of gravel and trying to make mud to put on my face. Why didn't I use makeup? Because I was 21. But oh my Lord. Yeah, that was that, a mud bucket.
Speaking of mud buckets, Benjamin, something better than a mud bucket is what stageable.com is.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to try and get through this really quickly, just 3 years of thinking about this into the next minute, 30 seconds. But so I am an actor, worked with Jim at the American Shakespeare Center and many other lovely faces that you see on this call. And I'm an actor turned entrepreneur, started a couple of businesses, and all of my training is in acting and none of it is in business. And so I remember trying to frantically catch up, reading a bunch of entrepreneurship books. And there was one exercise that someone led me through that he asked, what do you want in terms of a dollar figure for the next year? And being a good starving artist, I came up with a very, very small figure thinking that was the right thing to do. And quickly the exercise turned on me when the writer was mentioning that, he hopes that your wants are much bigger than just yourself. And that he hopes that your wants extend to the people in your family and the people in your community and the impact that you want to have on the world. And so that really got me thinking about what I wanted and what I wanted to be doing. And at the same time, I noticed a problem, which most entrepreneurs, good entrepreneurs at least, they see a problem in the world and they go and try and fix it. And so the problem that I noticed was that theaters had a really hard time connecting with the people who weren't in their audience physically present, and that they were making all this really good stuff and then they could only share it in one way. And so I noticed another problem, which was that we hadn't really rethought our funding models in a very, very long time, a point that's made painfully clear by the administration's deciding to cut the NEA. And artistic directors scrambling on what to do without grant money that they were anticipating, and not to mention that philanthropy seems to be a dying art. And so I started thinking about what it might mean if Netflix style and grassroots style, Patreon, Bandcamp, crowdsourcing, Kickstarter style, what if people came around something that was really, really important to them and showed monthly support, and in exchange they got engaged with as a community. And last year I think it's around 40 million people in America attended a play. And so if you run those figures out, and if 40 million people were to pledge $10 per month to the theater of their choice, that would be $400 million a month. And that equals $4.8 billion a year for the arts, which is more than 2.5 times the budget of Broadway. So basically, we could do a lot if people threw their monthly support behind projects that they believed in, and I think we could create a lot of really cool content in return for that kind of support. So that's what Stageable is all about. And so my encouragement, I'll drop the link. We're just getting started. It's a baby website. I'm not a website designer, so forgive the lack of beauty design, but you can go on and you can be a member of the American Globe Center and support them with a monthly subscription. And then in return, they will be making a lot of cool stuff for you. And also you'll get access, at least for right now, to everybody else who's on the website, which is only a few people. But we're doing a live stream from my wine and beer bar in Stanton, the Green Room, tomorrow or on Tuesday night. Irish folk band called I Draw Slow, and your membership includes that live stream. So you could tune in on Tuesday if you support the American Globe Center today or tomorrow.
Thank you, Benjamin. And folks, that's an amazing way to support us. And, people will get to see events like we're having today, which is amazing. I mean, this is a really unique opportunity, and you wouldn't get this anywhere else. So having this content available on Stageable to talk to 5 very talented, giving, loving, beautiful women who have played this role is so tremendous. So thank you again for doing that. Beyond that, this is a lofty project, and I so admire the vision that Jim is helping bring to the table with not just creating this amazing destination theater, but also doing theater differently than it's been done. All of us are here because we've been touched by the SSE or the ASC in some way. And we know how special that experience is and how different it can be from the poor way that a lot of theater gets done across the country. So having this home that we're creating to not only be a hub for Shakespeare and for the arts and education, but also the home of the revolution of theater a little bit is so key. So if in addition to being a Stageable member or looking for ways to help us financially, what we really ask is that you just spread the word, talk to people who you think might want to learn more about the project and who want to support the idea of creating this destination theater. It's going to be something really tremendous and unique. And, it's also something that's not easy to get to. It's a $100 million project, but it's going to change the country to the tune of billions of dollars, as Benjamin was talking about. So there's a real reason why his entrepreneurship and ours is in alignment right now. So, please feel free to find folks in your network that also have a love for the way we do Shakespeare, for the way we love to talk about these plays, and please connect us with those folks so we can show them more about what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you all so much for being here. It was awesome to see your faces.
It really
and
is.
to talk about this cool play.
Natalie, I'm going to tell you real quick, the sidebar. So the first one of these that we did, the first, Jim, 15, 20 minutes were just people weeping openly because we had a chance to reconnect with folks. And, just seeing your face on the screen and also seeing Joyce and Margot here, who were all part of that experience for us together, it's very emotional, and I'm really, really happy to see you.
Me too. Me too.
And Jason, you came back on camera, which also makes me emotional, just in a slightly different way. So hang in, folks. Stay tuned. Follow us on the social media platform of your choice. You'll see updates on Stageable every month. And Jim, thank you for gathering this amazing group of people.
Woohoo! This is a great time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Nice work, man. Recording is still running as requested so that we can edit. So just be.
I would like our podcast audience to know that when this On the Playground with Jim Warren, The Taming of the Shrew, hits podcast formatting, we will fix what I fucked up. I should have made a big deal about the induction. The induction in Taming of the Shrew is the key to the rest of the play. I put it lower on my list because it's not about Kate, and I wanted this to be Taming of the Shrew, but from Kate's point of view, rather than let's just talk all about this play. But the fact that the Taming of the Shrew is a play within a play. You go to see the show, and Shakespeare gives you a drunk who's getting kicked out of a bar because he's being an asshole. And then a guy, a lord comes along, and he passes out, and a lord comes along and decides to play a trick on him. And one of the tricks that they play, he's trying to make this drunk guy wake up and believe that instead of a drunken lower class lout, he is a lord, and he has a house, and he has all these servants. And look, a group of actors have come to perform a play. So the story of Kate and Petruchio is actually a play being put on for this drunken guy named Sly. And to me, setting up that opening lens, that opening view, the whole story of Kate and Petruchio is a play, and then that framework disappears, and you just get involved in the story. And in the script that we have from the first folio, the Lord doesn't come back. There's no bringing him and having closure to that part of the story. And I believe that's because Shakespeare realized he didn't need that he uses it as a setup to tell this story of Kate and Petruchio. But there is another play called Taming of a Shrew that does bring Sly back. He's there throughout the play and has a final framing device. And in my opinion, the shit's just badly written. It's not as good. And whether or not that was an early Shakespeare version, which some people believe, Shakespeare decided he had a better way to go. The other big belief is that it could be that it was another play that Shakespeare saw or heard of or knew about, and he created his version of that story to create the play that we know as Taming of the Shrew. So
I'm always curious, when one is writing in a time of, and this is a very debatable issue, but a strong female leader on the throne, how does one approach feminism at the time, right? I mean, it is
Shakespeare's the great example of that.
Right.
Other playwrights of the time did that, but not as well as Shakespeare did. And that could be the combination of Elizabeth being the most powerful human in the world. It could be Shakespeare having an older wife who might have been a strong female, empowered woman. And some say, what about his mother and how those things affected him, or the fact that he was just a better artist than the other playwrights. There are other playwrights of the time who write strong women characters. We still talk about Shakespeare and perform Shakespeare because he did it better.
Yeah. It's amazing. But what a wonderful experience. And, I do wish, and I hope for future conversations around this. And it was so great that I forget, Tracy? No, who was the woman who had directed the show? Right. Gemma. Yeah.
Levy.
Thank goodness to have Gemma on the call too, because we really got, when you think about how much has changed from 1989 to 2023, it's just staggering. As much as things change, they do unfortunately stay the same in a lot of ways, but there has been so much difference for each of those actresses as they've played that role. And because of the way the company used to operate, a lot of them were very young and sort of fresh out of college when they took on that role, which is fascinating too. But what a just lovely experience to sit and hear all of them, and also how much the approach to the play spoke to them as women. I remember with Natalie specifically, she did break my heart as her father figure in the show, knowing that I couldn't figure out what she needed to be happy. And there's some of that in Much Ado too. That just that sense with these froward women that they're just trying to find their place and their happiness, and a lot of the men in their life don't know how to help them get there. And with Natalie, I always remember at the wedding scene, and that came up specifically, I would get emotional on stage because she was so hurt in that moment of having Petruchio not show up at the wedding, or the way he shows up at the wedding. I'm sorry, dressed as a wreck. So
I don't know how it affected you playing her father, but we certainly worked on the idea that Kate knew she wasn't going to have to marry anybody she didn't want to.
Right.
That because we get lines that Baptista and again, the social time that Shakespeare's writing at were right on the cusp of when women started to marry for love and women were being considered property of their fathers and were basically sold off into marriage.
Right.
Both things existed in Shakespeare's time. The old guard of you are property and you go wherever you marry whomever your dad tells you to, was giving way to a new train of thought. And you see that throughout all of Shakespeare's plays, messing with that thing. But when Petruchio tells Kate that her father has already agreed that she will be his wife, that was and she doesn't have any lines to address it, but that was an internal heartbreak to know that my fucking dad fucking betrayed me.
Yeah.
Now I have to do the thing he told me he would never do. It becomes bearable for her on a level because another thing that we didn't get to talk about is love at first sight. I believe that couple has to love at first sight. And same thing with Romeo and Juliet. Same thing with Orlando and Rosalind. It's throughout a bunch of other Shakespeare plays that the cornerstone for the relationship is believing, holy shit, you are for me. But so I think that she had that love at first sight. I think she enjoys the banter with Petruchio, but part of it is knowing that he's full of shit and she doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to do. And then wham,
right.
Your dad gave you to me.
All three of those couples, I love at first wit is also on the table, right? Because all of them have word banter at the beginning of their relationships, some better than others. One could argue that Orlando isn't quite there, but all three of them have wordplay and they fall in love with each other's intelligence, which is such a beautiful idea. I also, just to breathe, so I had a lot of issues with Baptista as a character because I you know me, I always tend to lean way too hard into they gotta be nice guys. So and Baptista at the end of the play, I don't necessarily understand where he's at in his head during the wedding celebration, but I think there's a part of him that doesn't think Petruchio is going to be able to do it. So in a way, I don't know if he's necessarily committing Kate to a marriage. He's like, yeah, good luck. Good luck convincing her. So I hear
probably, and yet it's also part of the commerce of marriage.
Yeah.
And I think casting you to play that guy was brilliant work by the director. Oh, that was me. Because you are such a likable presence on stage. But I think you do some shit that is shit. I think that Baptista, I believe he loves his daughter and is trying to do the best for both of his daughters. But I think it's easy to question some of his choices. And you, as the actor, have to find a way through there so that you don't think it is now my time to be an asshole.
I also think in Vino Veritas, right? Because he's drunk at the end of the play, and I think that's part of it too. So I don't know. We could talk about me all day. I mean, we should have a podcast that's just about how great a director Jim is, especially when he casts me.
How many years ago?
That was so much
10 years
fun.
ago?
Yeah, when was the last time that happened? But
Jason, what came up for you while you were listening to that you thought, hey, we need to talk about this when we get to the end of that?
So some of the stuff that I wrote down as I was listening was I was really moved by Sarah Fallon's quote at the beginning where she said, I think Jim really gets this play. He understands the heart of it. And I was the question I wrote knowing that we were going to have this conversation was, what is the heart of it? But I think that's already been pretty well covered extensively. But I still was really struck by that. The other thing that had thought on more than one occasion as we were preparing for this on the playground event, I had thought, based upon the questions that we were using in the promotion of the event, and also based upon some of the questions that you had sent to the Badassery of Kate's, that we were going to discuss. And that question about, like, should this play be mothballed? I had a pretty good idea of what I thought these people, who I really only kind of know one of them, I had a pretty good thought of what I thought they were going to say. But the thing I was going to ask you in advance was, what if one of them says, yeah, absolutely, we should never effing do this fucking play again? Which, but were you surprised at all did you feel like, Jim, that you knew what their answers were to that question were going to be?
Let me address that specific by starting with the general thing.
Okay.
I believe at the Shakespeare Theater Association group, that the group of Shakespeare theaters that are part of this thing, STA, I believe that the majority of those theaters will not do this play anymore, or at least won't do it now. And we'll talk about not doing it ever. I believe that we, I'm gonna do something that I apologize to our audience who is listening to this. I apologize for the broad stroke I'm gonna say here, but I think that there are more people creating theater that are lefty liberals than there are, righty conservatives. And I believe that the lefty liberal world has decided, has judged this play as being misogynistic and not worth doing, unless you're going to do it as, let's watch this terrifying tragedy of the subjugation of a woman. I don't believe they understand the play, and so there is a part of me that wants to do this play all the time, and unfortunately, I think as a white male cisgendered heterosexual, I'm the wrong guy to direct it in most cases, because the world needs to hear women directing this play with the idea of it's a love story between a dude who knows how to say fuck everyone, who teaches this incredible woman how to say that for herself, and that they become a team by the end of it, so that I believe everybody is confused at the end of that play. Why is she saying this? And I believe what Gemma said is true, that there are some things in that final speech where I think Kate is making fun of those other women. I think there are other things that I directed every single one of those Kates to deliver it in a way that two people can think different things about what Kate thinks, because the mystery of what Shakespeare means, to me, is part of the magic that other theater makers don't want to do. They want to answer every question. There is nothing at all conservative going on in this final speech. It's all fuck you. And I think it's more clever than that. I think Shakespeare as a whole is more clever than that. So I didn't know if any of I know that these 5 women on stage in that role believed wholeheartedly that it was a love story, and thought it was a great thing to be giving the world back then. Not having kept up with all of them, I didn't know if they would be in a different place, this many years later. And to me, if you want to argue about the play being sexist because of this, or this, I'll take you through why I think you're wrong, and why the play tells you you're wrong about this, and this. That doesn't mean that folks can't have their own opinion. Everybody gets to have their own opinion. But I believe that the play is a beautiful story about two outsiders who find each other, and as Petruchio says at one point, if she and I be pleased, what's that to you?
Yeah.
And to me, I'm getting goosebumps. That's the play in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Did I answer? Did I get to the specific question?
Yeah, I think you did. And the note that I made about it was I wrote, they've played the roles. And I think, they've played the role, because I think that there's a lot of people who have really strong opinions about this play who have not lived inside this play.
That's true.
And who have not lived it in front of a live audience. You know, I think there's a lot of people that have strong opinions about this play that don't really know this play. You know, and I think that sometimes my strong opinion is just based on somebody else's strong opinion who I usually agree. Agree with.
Hey, Petruchio, yes?
No, I stage manage. I've never been in this show.
Okay.
I've never. I stage managed a production of this a long time ago. This was the only time that the Mechanicals have done it. I think there is a masterfulness to the depth of the love story that he creates because of the transformational nature of the relationship for both people in the relationship. Because I think some of Shakespeare's other love stories, you don't see that level of transformation in the people in the relationship. You know, like Romeo and Juliet is supposed to be the greatest love story. You know, so many people, oh yeah, it's just these two kids who are so impulsively acting upon things, but you don't really see any change. You know, Romeo is pretty Romeo by the end, and Juliet's pretty Juliet by the end. But you were talking about, Jim, how
better.
both, yeah.
Better, yeah.
But you were talking about how Petruchio unlocks something in Catherine, something that she had been searching for, and the ability to use her voice to say, you know, fuck all this, right? And in that sun and moon scene, and there's just that level of transformation that adds such an incredible depth to the love story. And I'm going to give you a really weird other show that it makes me think about. And I think about this was one of the first musicals I ever directed. I think about the story of Guys and Dolls, and how it has become this sort of like Dick Tracy, comic book story anymore. But there's this relationship in Guys and Dolls between Sarah Brown, who is the woman who runs the Save Your Soul mission, and Sky Masterson, who is the king of the gangsters. And the way that they both transform each other in that story gives that relationship such an incredible different depth. And that's what I think about a lot when I think about Shrew. And that's what I think I heard in between a lot of the things that folks were saying today. And yeah, I was not surprised at all for people who had lived within this script to say, why would you mothball this script?
Yeah, you're spot on, Jason. And I think it's important that, like, what you don't want to do in this, and I'm not going to call it a conceit because I think it is textually in the play, just like Jim does. But when you approach the play from what we believe is a very truthful and honest space, you don't want Petruchio to try to be this like male savior either, right? So he has to grow, he has to learn. And there are a lot of moments in the show where you can see that come out, and I do think that he comes in thinking, I'm going to show her this new world because I think she's cool enough to share in it. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, wow, she might even be a little bit better at this than I am, so he starts to come around too. And they do end up forming this new thing together where both of them are better than they started. He's a little more humble in the right places. She's a little more satisfied in what her lot in life is getting to be. And she learns that the shrewishness can be used to her advantage, and it's a really fascinating thing to watch. And, it's one of the plays that, I've just been lucky enough to get to do a couple of times. And I think I've played like 5 different characters in it now. And every time I come at it, I learn a little bit more about that love story. And I gotta say, Jim, it was interesting though to look at and listen to the women that you have chosen to play this role. My gosh, just some of the strongest, most empathetic women. I don't know a couple of them, but the ones that I do know, I'm like, wow. Like I never really looked at it until I saw your email the other day. I never went, oh, who are these Kates? Like, you're gonna have a badassery of Kates, and yes, they're all very badass women, but they're all incredibly intelligent. They're all incredibly well spoken. They are all so giving of themselves and so open. Like, it's just cool that I've gotten a chance to work with Joyce, Margot, and Natalie together. But just the way Sarah and Jenna speak and share, like for Jenna to dive into her journal entries from that time, and not only dive into them, but know she has them and have them readily available to share, like just such amazing women. And I think our company is going to carry on that tradition of just bringing good souls together to create great work. If I could put that on the back of the t-shirt, I would think about it,
To give our audience, and this is probably news to the two of you. Jenna Hoban wrote a one-person play about her journals and about burning those journals when she reached a certain age. And in the play, there are journals sitting around the stage, and she picks them up and reads from them. And it's a story through partly her life and partly through a character that she's creating life. And it ends with a bonfire of her diaries. And I want to say that that's the name of the play. Bonfire of Diaries, Diary. I can't remember. JennaHoban.com. And you can see that
was on Stageable, yes?
Plays.
Was that presented on Stageable?
It was live streamed by Benjamin. I'm not sure that Stageable had existed yet.
Okay.
I think that Villains and Clowns might have been. I think Villains and Clowns might have been the first thing that was officially Stageable. But I want to address something that you said there, and that you had asked the question during the talk. I'm pretty sure that I told all five of them they never, ever need to win over the audience. That Shakespeare gives Kate the lines, plus I was so fucking brilliant in casting them that there could be between Kate and Petruchio in their scenes together. There are times when they're trying to get the audience on their side versus the other person. But I think for any actor to act likable is stupid. I think that any actor that thinks they have to win the audience into liking their character, they will fail. That it's about playing the moment. It's about casting the audience in a particular role for that character at that time that results in them being on their side.
Yeah.
But if you say, I'm going to try to get the audience on my side, I have the feeling that more often than not, that person will fail. And if they succeed, they're going to succeed in a ham-handed way that would not be my preference.
Yeah, and I think we've all seen productions of this show in particular. In my case, that the casting may not have been as brilliant as some that we've seen, and you never get there because the leads are not likable, and it turns into when who was it that mentioned the bullwhip in the show?
Kim Carroll.
Kim mentioned the bullwhip. Like, even if there is no bullwhip, if those actors don't have the charisma and don't have the connection, it turns into the audience getting hit with that kind of bullwhip the whole show, because you never get the love story. It just feels unnecessary and aggressive. And if you can't capture that, which I think would be a great topic for another conversation down the line, Jim, for one of our podcasts, because all three of us have also directed, and casting is such a unique piece of the puzzle. And since we're going to have kind of a different casting mission for ourselves, not really different, but just the right casting mission for ourselves as we move forward, that might be a fun topic to talk about, because it is such a unique element.
And it happens all the time with Shakespeare's plays. Not only do you need to cast the right actor in the right role, but you got to cast the right actor in these several roles that they will connect with each other and connect with the audience. And that takes experience and through trial and error and knowing how to cast people well, and then training the actors, working the actors, giving them the skills they need to better connect with one another, to better connect with the audience. Those are things that are teachable. You can't teach charisma, but you can unleash and direct and hopefully bring out more charisma. Natalie's a great example of someone who is filled with charisma, but also needed to get bigger with some of that stuff to inhabit that character. That she as a human was less loud and brash than Kate is. And so she had it in her, but it needed room to breathe. Others of those needed it to be pulled back some. So
we won't speak to that.
Anything else come up for y'all during that you think we should talk about? Because I wrote nothing. Because I was just trying to, oh my God, look how late it's getting. Look how late it's getting. Oh, fuck, we got to get this thing in.
So just so you know, and Jason, you can cut this part out. I mean, I think we should just book the 2 hours in general. And, you know, if we're into that wrap up phase, talking about stageable and stuff like that, by the time we hit the 90-minute mark, I think we're okay.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly,
Benjamin had a hard out. Benjamin had a hard out at 4:30.
Oh, I know.
And he hung on and he hung on and he hung on.
I'm so glad I kept asking questions. But that is the kind of thing where I think, you know, we could have talked for hours with that group and it still had new and interesting things to hear. You know, my only other takeaway was, you know, and again, this is maybe another podcast for us down the line, but a discussion of the quote unquote problem plays and why we don't think they're problems is important, you know, because I think that, and maybe we could have another group of folks who have done, you know, some of those more problematic parts for you over the years too. You know, I'd love to get your merchant cast together and you know, talk to them. And but we have such a rich repository of friends of this project. And, you know, I want to encourage anyone that's listening to the podcast right now to reach out to those friends. You know, I mean, we mentioned it during the talk, but if we want to accomplish this at the level we want to accomplish it at, if we want to become a beacon for doing this type of destination theater, we need all of our friends to come along for the ride. And we need everyone to be out there supporting us and talking to their local politicians, talking to, you know, other theater leaders and producers. You know, we want to create that rising tide, and we need help and we need support. So, you know, I just love the bench that you have created. I mean, it's such a testament to the style of work you've done and the quality with which you have done it. And, you know, you've tooted your own horn enough on this call, but I'm going to toot it for you again.
Never Enough. That's the name of the album that Melissa Etheridge is. It's called Never Enough.
I just think it's so ballsy to ask other people to toot your horn. You're like, as you introduce yourself, could you please also tell something about Jim Warren?
Yes.
Today on Why Jim Warren is Brilliant, we've invited.
Now, I didn't actually go that far. I didn't ask them to say why Jim Warren is brilliant. I actually said something about Jim Warren, something embarrassing, or something about how we met. So, I mean, I believe that if we go to the tape, it will show that I did not ask them to say I was brilliant.
I have 2 final thoughts. My first final thought is, can we also do a podcast about problem actors? Not only the problem plays, but we need to talk about the problem actors, right?
And we're going to mention them all by name. Tune in.
By name, right. Yeah, and we will put their photos up.
Find out if you made the list.
Yeah, right, precisely. Yes. And could we please decide that Tom's new nickname is Mud Bucket?
I'm down.
It's pretty good.
Mud Bucket Evans. Yeah, I also love the fact that Joyce was rubbing gravel on her face outside of the theater.
That was the harder part. I thought the grosser thing was really a bucket of mud. The dress is in it, has been marinating in it since we arrived at the venue, so that it looks, it actually is. It's not pretend fake mud. It is real mud. So
You're the
you
mud
said a
bucket.
couple of things. I thought there was one other thing, Jason. Is there something else?
Just my nickname.
No, that was it.
Oh,
Number
the
one,
nickname.
a podcast about problem actors, and number two, welcome to the world, old Mudbucket Evans.
Okay, you just took care of what I was going to ask for. What's a tagline that we can have for the beginning of it? And I think that what you just said about Mudbucket Evans is the line that starts the podcast.
All right, we've reached my heart out.
All right, can we kill the recording so I can talk to you about some other stuff?
Yep.
Real quick.
Yeah, but I do have to pee.